Hi guys, this is how I beat Dynamite Dunes. Dynamite Dunes is the second scenario on Rollercoaster Tycoon and Rollercoaster Tycoon Classic, and like Forest Frontiers before it's quite an easy scenario to complete. You have 3 years to get to 650 guests and achieve a park rating of 600. You start with one ride, the impressive mine train coaster Dynamite Blaster, so my first job was to adjust the entrance price from the incredibly good value £3 to £6.50 based on its excitement rating. I also need a mechanic to make sure the ride gets its regular inspections and a handyman to deal with the consequences of the ride's nausea rating. There's quite a long path from the park entrance to Dynamite Blaster, so I want to build some rides around that. I'll do that fairly quickly to get up to 4 or 5 rides in the first few months, but looking at what's available to buy, I need to get maximum research funding and select my research categories. We only have a 15,000 maximum loan amount, so I'll spend all of that getting a mix of additional new rides, starting with a few static rides near the park entrance, twist, merry-go-round and a log flume, for which I'll build splash mine and flatten a little land to make sure the ride sits on ground and not at all raised. I'll also add an on-ride photo section to raise more money from Splash Mine. After adding and organising a second handyman, the information kiosk was available from research, so that went straight up at the front of the park, and then it was time for another big ride. To get my ride count up quickly, I went for another pre-built ride, and this large flat area near Splash Mine was perfect for a wooden roll. I decided this would be a great ride to build myself and make use of the underground space within the large sand dune at the front right of the park. This would generate me a little bit more excitement on the go-karts and reduce the overground space the ride would require. I always find go-karts to be a popular ride no matter what the scenario is or what needs the park guests have. I built a twisting and turning one-lap track under the dune and the go-karts were ready to open. A little bit more park management and the addition of some shops and stalls followed, not forgetting benches and trash cans for the guests. Remember to adjust the prices so that you can maximise profit without guests skipping the stalls because they are too expensive. So, as we move into year 2, I added the newly researched spiral slide and was happy with the rides I had, so decided to build a custom mini coaster and, like the go-karts, I went underground, or at least under the dunes, with this one to save some space and increase the excitement rating. My coaster building was still quite rusty at this point, and so it took a couple of edits to get the ratings right, but that was nothing compared to the trouble I'd have with the corkscrew coaster later in the scenario. Once I was happy, my first custom coaster and third coaster of the park was ready to be opened, and I went on to add a swinging inverted ship, which had been researched while I was building that mini coaster. Time-wise, I was about halfway through the scenario at this point and very confident with the goals. I was already over 600 guests, so we only needed a few more to hit 650, and the park rating was looking good too. So I decided to try and build an epic corkscrew coaster around the back of the park. Okay, maybe epic is an overstatement, but a ride which would wrap around the back of the park with some exciting turns and inversions. But it had been years since I built a sizable roller coaster, and wow, it went wrong. If you Google online, you'll find some handy guides to things like maximum speeds for hitting turns and inversions before you start getting those ultra extreme stats. I didn't do that, and I paid the price for my rustiness, so after a lot of playing around with the speed and the placement of the special track sections, I was finally happy with what I had. Watch the full play with me video if you want to see me really struggle to get this coaster right. The good news was, my park was looking good for hitting the goals, and that gave me a perfect scenario to get back into the habit of building successful roller coasters. A little bit of trial and error, I think, in this one. So that coaster build took me into year 3, and I had some more rides researched by then, so I added a 3D cinema and launched Freefall near the front of the park, and then decided to slightly flatten the top of the dunes and create a small plateau for a Ferris wheel offering views across the park. I connected it over the go-karts to the front of the park and down towards Dynamite Blaster at the back, and gave guests a new toilet and chip stand up there at this area too. I dropped in a new Dodgems ride and then noticed what tends to happen, especially with static rides after a few years of operation. Guests are bored of them. So I replaced the merry-go-round with a circus and then tried a good old-fashioned Rollercoaster Tycoon loophole. Guests bored of that 3-year twist? Delete it and replace it with a brand new identical ride. They'll never know. So, as it was now October year 3, my park rating was good and my guest count way higher than the 650 required. It was just a case of waiting for the end of the month, and there it is, scenario 2 complete. Honestly, this is another straightforward one, and by consistently adding new rides and keeping an eye on guest requirements and fixing any issues such as messy paths, not enough toilets or bad ride maintenance, you'll easily complete this scenario. The best thing about it is the 3 years gives you plenty of time to play about and experiment with building custom rides or scenery. I didn't do much scenery in this one, but it doesn't mean you can't. So that's me done with Dynamite Dunes. Next up, Leafy Lake.